I apologize in advance for my voice. Still sick and getting over it. When you have 2 young kids at home that get sick, you're bound to get sick. But here we go with what I read in September. It's a wrap up. Starting, of course, with Towers of Midnight, book 13 of the, that probably looks like 31. There you go. 13 of the Wheel of Time. I still have yet to do my review of this. I am behind on several reviews. I feel like I'm saying this every video now. Behind on several reviews. Towers of Midnight was fantastic though. I finally got the payoff for something that I was waiting for 7 or 8 books or so. A lot of great, fantastic character moments. Matt was great. Perrin had some awesome stuff going. The whole main cast, like when I say main cast in the Wheel of Time, it's, Matt, Perrin, Rand, Egwene, Nynaeve, like the main Two Rivers crew, and they all have a fantastic character arc, and they're all interesting in their own way. They've all grown immensely since book 1. With time, with age, with responsibility, everything has been awesome so far. As I mentioned in my TBR video for October, I've loved the Wheel of Time again ever since Knife of Dreams. So it's been awesome. I am already starting on A Memory of Light. It's kind of a bittersweet moment already, just getting into the final book of the Wheel of Time, and then I'll be done. And before the show even airs, that's wild to me. I didn't think that was going to happen. But I'm loving the Wheel of Time. This review will be up likely sometime next week. I still need to catch up on a few things here. There's going to be a book call next week, and probably this one as well as one other review. But let's get up to, I can't talk today. Let's talk about what I read next, which was actually a reread, and still one of my favorite books that I've read, and definitely my favorite sci-fi book that I've ever read. And that is, of course, Frank Herbert's Dune. So this was one of the only books that I've reread so far. I don't normally reread, but in anticipation of the movie, all that jazz, I wanted to reread the book. Now, I already have a spoiler-free and sort of like vlog review videos up on the channel. Now, I didn't want to just redo a review for this book because I already loved it, praised it the first time around. I would simply be doing the same thing the second time around. So I am actually experimenting with a different style video, and what I'm going to do is the sort of trailer or intro to that video I've already recorded, and that was out on my Twitter a few weeks back. I am actually just going to roll that here and then go to the next book. So feel free to skip ahead if you have seen it or don't care about it. This is basically just like a minute and a half of the introduction to that video that I'm making, and that video will drop probably in the next 2 weeks or so once it's completed.
Frank Herbert's Dune, the novel turned movie, turned miniseries, turned almost movie, and finally a movie again, is the single greatest science fiction novel of all time. It was published in 1965 and would go on to spawn 5 sequels, win both the Nebula and Hugo Awards, and sell nearly 20 million copies. This can be a bit daunting and overwhelming to get into for new readers. For now, I will stick with the original novel, Dune. With Denis Villeneuve's Dune adaptation on the horizon, I thought what better time than now to talk about this masterpiece of science fiction. Dune was quite the undertaking, where Frank Herbert employed what he called a technique of enormous detail, in which he studied and prepared notes for over a 4-year period between 1957 and 1961. He then wrote and rewrote the book between 1961 and 1965. Modern science fiction, as well as many of the works of fantasy, owe a great deal to Frank Herbert and the Dune series. Things like Star Wars might not exist if not for Dune. We wouldn't have some of the great sci-fi fantasy blends of Red Rising or Sun Eater. Even some of the big hitters in fantasy, such as George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, or The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, may look drastically different if Dune hadn't existed. The influence that this novel has on both the science fiction and fantasy genres has been felt for decades and will continue to stand the test of time. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, Dune by Frank Herbert.
Okay, next up, and back to fantasy. So here's the thing. This is what happened. My original plan was to be doing, I think it was Cold Days and Skin Game in the month of September. And then I just kept reading Dresden books, and I just blew through to Briefcases, which you absolutely do need to read most of prior to Peace Talks and Battleground. And normally I don't think the whole like tie-in things really matter that much. It definitely does here because there's so many characters, villains, and protagonists alike, and just stuff happening that without briefcases, you would just be like, what is this? Like, there's some, interactions with Harry and other characters where they act like they know each other, and you're just like, I've literally never seen you in this series before. It's in briefcases, so read that. But yeah, I flew through briefcases. I read most of that physically, and then I found the audio. There was this weird thing where I didn't think it was on Audible because I was searching briefcases, and there's like 5 things that show up, none of which have anything to do with the Dresden Files. You have to put in briefcases Dresden or Jim Butcher, and then it shows up. But that was fantastic. Most of the stories in that are pretty good. Some of them are whatever. I mean, they're skippable in the grand scheme of things, but all the Bigfoot stuff, what is it? Cold Case, Aftermath was in, Side Jobs. There's a bunch of ones that are just fantastic that you get with one with Marcone. Those are all great, and they all play directly into Peace Talks and Battleground, so definitely read that first. But yeah, Peace Talks and Battleground. I am completely caught up on the Dresden Files. I still am totally in love with this series, and Battleground did not ruin the series for me, so I'm not going to be one of those Goodreads people or BookTube people that reads what happened in Battleground and hate the entire series because of it. One, I think even if you hated the thing that happens in Battleground, you're free to hate that. That's fine. I hated reading it. I wish it had happened differently. Through talking with people, I see the side of things that it makes sense why it happened the way that it did. I still wholly disagree with exactly how it happened, and I kind of wish that certain thing played out differently. But I'm ultimately fine with everything after it and the effects on the characters and just everything that happens. It's all really well done. So I can even I don't know, for that to ruin all of the Dresden Files for you, like, did you forget 17, almost 18, which Battleground is the 18th book, fantastic books, and you hate the entire series because of one thing? Come on. Unreasonable. But these were great books. Peace Talks is noticeably weaker than Battleground. Battleground is an epic battle. I mean, that is, every sense of the word, probably the most action-filled Dresden to date. Not lacking on plot or character development at all. It's just more focused on the combat and what's happening. I mean, if you read this far, you know the scale of everything, you know what's going on, you know the stakes at hand. So it made sense that it focused wholly on the battle. I think you still probably could have had this function as one book and just had it been 700 pages. I don't know exactly why they had them split it up, because Peace Talks definitely does feel like it's not enough story stretched out a little bit, and it's not even that long of a book, so I don't understand the need to split it. It didn't really bother me because, again, these books read incredibly fast, especially if you're doing audio mixed in as well. They're just such a great adventure and ride that it's always fun to get through, and I loved both of them. I mean, Peace Talks obviously is like a B tier-ish book for me, and Battleground is one of the best of the series that I've read, I think, to date, and I'll probably do a full tier list here soon. My top 5 would probably be Changes, Battleground, Cold Days, Skin Game, and Small Favor. In that order, I believe, was what I said in Discord. And then, I mean, everything from like Small Favor to, Turncoat, Ghost Stories is honestly up there too, but, White Knight, Proven Guilty, Deadbeat, they're all very close together. So, again, everything from 7 to 18, fantastic books. Is it 18, 17? Am I making up numbers now? Oh no, this is 17, isn't it? My world is crumbling. See, I've been saying 18 books this whole time. It's 17. I'm a dum-dum. Anyway, doesn't matter. Fantastic series. I cannot wait for 12 months and everything that comes beyond that once those are published. I am waiting now with you all. I would happily have more Dresden Files spoiler chats. I'm very happy to unmute that channel in my own Discord and have all those fun chats and theory crafting and telling Nick that he's wrong. Anyway, Dresden Files is fantastic. If you haven't read these, get into them. I mean, it's crazy to see what started as basically a noir police sort of drama with wizards, and then it just expanding so much to, it is epic fantasy now. Like, straight up, the stakes have never been as high as they are now. There's so many characters, so many moving parts, so many factions involved. It's insane. And just learning more about Jim Butcher as a writer and like why he created this series and some of these side stories basically as a bet, fantastic. They're so well done. I can't wait to see where this ends up now, because there's 22 main novels happening, and then the gigantic trilogy, whatever he calls it, badass motherfucker trilogy. I don't know what it's called. It's going to be insane. And the stakes were already crazy high in Battleground, so I imagine that the scope is going to get even bigger. It's going to move out beyond Chicago into the rest of the world, probably. If it stays in Chicago for all of that, it would be kind of surprising. But just, I mean, the power levels of characters are so high. Everything is just awesome. I love it. I love it. And then in the last couple of days, I went ahead and wrapped up Of Blood and Bone. So A Time of Courage is book 3 of that series, the follow-up series that takes place roughly 100 years after Faithful and the Fallen. And I did like this book a lot more than A Time of Dread and A Time of Blood combined, basically. But it still just doesn't quite do it for me. I liked a lot of it. John Gwynne is always good for pacing, always good with action, always good at balancing those multiple POVs. He has some standout characters in this series, and I had mentioned it in A Time of Dread, and unfortunately I haven't even done my review for A Time of Blood, and I had to miss that collaborative chat that we normally do. I'll be on this one. This series, this trilogy was hit or miss for me as far as characters. Some of the antagonists just still, even through this book, there were a few things that, saved one of them a bit for me, but overall the antagonists throughout this trilogy were just by far the glaring weakness of the trilogy. A couple of the main protagonist POVs, even by the end of A Time of Courage, I still didn't care about. This book did turn me around on one of them. And then, of course, Drem is like the main favorite of everybody. I think John Gwynne by far put the most love and care into that character, and it makes sense. And he's just a great character in the story. Definitely goes through a lot of character growth. I enjoyed him the most, and far and away the best character. Probably second would be Riv, and then everybody else. There was just something nagging at me through this entire trilogy. I was like, I love John Gwynne's writing. I loved Faithful and the Fallen. I loved, Shadow of the Gods. I feel like I should enjoy this more. And it was exactly what I worried about, where one, it did something that I was really hoping this whole story wouldn't focus around. And then it did. And I was like, well, that just kind of feels the same. And it's not as good this time around. And it just overall, it felt like a weaker version of Faithful and the Fallen. And that's just where it comes down to me. They're good books. They're well written. That's not a knock on Gwynne's writing, because it's consistently great through all these books. Sense of Valor. Malice was a little bit clunky at first, but I mean, I've loved his writing. It just something just didn't click for me. And I hate to say that because I love his books, but yeah, just something wasn't quite there for me. But this book definitely is the best of the three by far. It's probably better than Valor. I don't think it's better than Ruin or Wrath, honestly. But I mean, that's one of his better written books. The finale, of course, is fantastic. He does action like no one else is doing in fantasy, aside from Brandon Sanderson. It's excellent. It's bloody and violent and relentless at times. And I mean, he's got a lot of cool things going for it. At the end of the day, what I love about the Banished Lands, and I don't know if he's coming back to this at some point in the future or not, I love the old classic style fantasy feel to it, where you have angels and demons and ogres and drags and just all the like traditional kind of fantasy good versus evil stuff going on. I love that about these books. I can't help but compare it to Faithful and the Fallen, which I loved a lot, and it just never hit those points for me. But yeah, so I mean, overall, I did like them, but that's where it stops. I like them. So that wraps up what I read in September, though. October, my TBR is on the channel already, so I'm continuing the Dune saga with Dune Messiah and Children of Dune. Book 14 of Wheel of Time, so A Memory of Light, I'll be wrapped up there. So I'm caught up on Dresden. I will be caught up on Wheel of Time. I'll be halfway through Dune. And then, now my TBR is finally opening up. We saw that The Martian did win my Patreon pick for the month of October, so that will be read as well. I'm liking a lot of these sci-fi books getting mixed in. They're always shorter than fantasy books. Of course, I am reading a Game of Thrones again as part of our reread with Leanna and Jimmy. Really looking forward to that, actually, even if George never finishes the series. But yeah, it's a breath of fresh air to not have a ton of gigantic fantasy books to get through, and until someone inevitably makes me read more of them. The Martian and Best Served Cold were the 2 Patreon picks that were going head to head. Best Served Cold is like a 600-page book. Jesus. So fantasy books are long, guys. They're long. But that is going to do it for my wrap up for September. Looking forward to my October reads and more reviews coming to you. I just need to catch up a little bit. As I'm talking, you could probably notice my voice sounds like shit. It's on its way out. There's going to be a haul of books happening next week. Yep. The only thing that's not going to be included in that is I did order the Waterstone, is that what it is, version of Dune, but that doesn't come out until now this month, but not for a couple weeks. So that'll be here at some point, and I'll show it off, but not going to be part of that book haul because it doesn't come out for a couple weeks. So